Hello, I'm Vinay,
Hello, I'm Rumi.
and welcome to
Two Tired Teachers.
We're back with you today because we want to talk about another one of those pressing issues that teachers talk about all the time, and that's planning. So we know that planning is a necessity if you aspire to do anything. Not even talking about just teacher planning, just planning, period. When you wake up in the morning, you start planning. What am I going to have for breakfast? It could be as simple as that, but planning is a necessity. So along with teaching, it's also a necessity.
It's necessity. In my opinion, lesson plans are not just necessary, but they are vital. And lesson plans should be in place as a step-by-step path of what we're teaching and how we're teaching it.
All right. So there's an old adage that says if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. Nobody really knows who was the first person to say that quote, but we say it often. So likewise, the same goes for teachers. When you are preparing to give information to your students, you have to have a solid plan. So that's what we want to kind of discuss for a little bit today. Planning, and this is planning, not planning time, because we know
Yes.
planning time is a whole nother monster. So it deserves its own time. So we'll give it some time at another time, but not today. So we're just going to talk about the plan, not planning time. All right, this topic is certainly a hot button issue for most teachers. We hear about it as far as the union goes, law things, all the time. We hear about planning. So we want to discuss it today. We're going to talk about three aspects of planning. We want to talk about the format. We want to talk about what's included in the plan. And we also want to talk about why are we doing this plan.
You will not going to have any kind of control of what the format of the plan is. It will depend on which state you are. It will depend on which school district you are, and most of the times it will straightforward depending what your principal is presenting as a format for the planning.
Absolutely. So we want to right now show you some various examples of some different formats. Now we're in the same city, however, we're in different districts. And here I can say for sure in my district, the formatting changes from school to school. So it's based upon whatever your instructional coach or whatever it's called and wherever you are. It depends on what they think is the best format. So I'll start. I'm going to start by saying this is how I started. Anybody as old as me will remember the glorious little boxes, and all we had to do was write a few statements in every little box for each day. And when the principal wanted a copy, I'm really dating myself. We put a carbon copy behind the page and we just wrote on top of it, and then we tore that page out and gave it to the principal. That was back in the day. Now, I have a whole stack of papers. Each one of these have their own individual use. So we start with, this is a pre-planning format. And this is for math, and then there's one for reading, and there's one for writing. And then you have the actual plan. This one's for reading, then there's one for math, and you have to fill in all the little things. So I actually brought one that a teacher from my school has actually completed, and this is a reading language arts plan. And you can see there's a lot of details that have gone into this one plan for 1 week. So that's from my school. Ruby's going to show you some examples from her school.
My school, my teachers receive what we call rigor readiness plan. And in that one, they already have the guidance of where they have to go with their plans. And then they get this format right here, and it starts by day. And this part, the day that the week started was a Tuesday. I suppose we had the Monday off. And then each one of the parts of the plan that has to be there, and the little notes of everything that has to be included in colors. This is right here, one-day plan, and this beautiful part right here is the same format for week, for math. You can see it like this.
Like 25 pages.
25, but this one is 22.
So what we're trying to say to you as far as the format goes, you don't probably have a choice in how you do it.
No.
It's part of your expectations. It's part of your evaluation system, more than likely, and you're just going to have to do whatever they tell you to do. So that's pretty much all we can say about that. It's tedious, it's questionable, but it has to be done because that's what they've chosen for us to do. So if you move from one district to another one, don't get upset because you're used to doing this format and now I have to do this kind of format.
Yeah.
We literally are in two districts that literally could be right across the street from each other, and it's that different from one side of the street to the other side of the street. So as far as format goes, just know that you don't have any control.
No control.
You just have to do whatever it is that they want you to do.
And one more detail, don't get upset when you switch from district to district or from school to school and you think, okay, I have a year worth of plans already done, I can use those. Yeah, it's not going to fit. It's just not happening.
Yeah, so that's just a necessary evil that you have to learn to live with. We don't like it. We don't even love it.
No.
We don't love it. We don't like it, but we have to do it. And if your school is anything like my school, there's a whole set of expectations that you have before you actually do your plan versus when you actually do the plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, because by planning time, you will have to come to planning with certain parts of the lesson plan already input in.
Right.
And already looked at activities and assessments and things like this. So the planning part does not say, I'm going to sit down and do the lesson plan right now. No, you come into planning time and you already have parts of the lesson plan prepared.
So we're going to go right into what's included in the plan. So I'm going to let Ruby talk about some specifics about what's included in the plan.
So that one, it's kind of interesting. It's one thing what it's included, what your state education agency says that it has to be included in the lesson plan, and it's a completely different vision of what your school or your district will ask you to put in the lesson plans. I am going to read that part because that's important part. In our case, in our state, what it's in basic for the lesson plan came from a response of the Paper Reduction Act. Mm-hmm. And then there was very specific what we have to put and what we don't have to put there. And then a school kind of changed everything and the teachers complained and it came to be a legal case. That legal case is Isleta ISD and Commissioner of Education versus Porter et al. From 2015. As an outcome of that case, it was outlined specific details that have to be there. And those are the template has to be presented to everybody. The standard has to be in the template. The standard objective has to be there, and the resources the students will be using. No assessments, no differentiation or modification can be put in the lesson plans. Now it's actually not our reality.
No, it is 100% not the reality.
And if you're in a district of innovation, it's going to be completely out of control and it's going to be a complete decision of whatever the district wants. I'm going to tell you what part in my lesson plans are. I'm just reading just the separates on the template right here. Obviously, the target ticks of the week, the primary student expectations, the materials and resources you're going to use, the academic vocabulary, problem-related vocabulary, essential questions, misconceptions, daily demonstration of learning, which is the exit ticket or some kind of assessment, the do now, the hook of the lesson. In my district, we do, our motto is the I do, we do, you do. So the I do, the we do, which is the guided practice, and then the you do, which is the independent practice, and then it's the closing part of the lesson. And then specifically underneath, you have the differentiations that you're going to use, and the considerations for ELLs and SPED Ed kids.
So I'm going to go through the list of things that have to be on our lesson plan. So we have the tech or the teak, depending on how you like to say it. Then you have the topic or the concept that you are supposed to be teaching. You have your TPO, which means your 3-part objective. You have your vocabulary. You have your materials. You have your number talk, what you're going to do for your number talk. Mm-hmm. And this is specifically for math. You have your essential questions. You have your topic. You have your mini lesson and how you're going to introduce it. If you're going to use your interactive notebook. You have your teacher small groups. You have your partner and your independent practice. You have your technology. You have your fact fluency. You have your closing. How am I going to assess it? And you have your ELPs, like she said. So every district, every school can tell you to put something in there that's different from what this case said has to be there.
Yes.
And so I think this is why we have so much controversy when it comes to planning and planning time, because most of the things that we actually have to do in school sometimes don't line up with what supposedly the law says that it has to line, how it has to line up. So that's a big thing. But in your opinion, what are the things that, to have a good lesson plan, even when you, after you've looked at all of this stuff, there are some components that must be in your lesson plan for it to be successful. And what would you say some of those things are?
I have to say that I kind of agree with the vision. We need more parts of the lesson plan than what the education agencies say. So for me, the most important part that I need to be in the lesson plan. Obviously, the standard that you're looking at this week, or the days that you're looking at that standard. I really, really like having the essential questioning, because I want to go back and look at those, and they are kind of my basics of what I'm saying. I like the misconceptions. I like the objective. I do like the assessment at the end of the lesson plan, or the lesson in the class. And I do think it's very important, or specifically for my case, I like the introducing the teacher part of the lesson, because that kind of gives me security of what I'm doing when I'm thinking about what I'm putting, how I'm putting it. That gives me security.
So one thing that I found, especially when we're working with teachers and you're thinking about going into your planning session, one thing for me that is more than essential is that the teacher needs to know what the standards are.
Absolutely.
So you can't come into a pre-planning or a planning session, or sit down to do plans and not know exactly what it is that you're supposed to be teaching. So if you've not taken some time and looked over your standards and read them and understand what they are asking you to get into this student, then you've already shot yourself in the foot.
That, I don't know if they say the same in your district, but in my district we call it unpacking the standard. And there is a specific way of doing it, but I agree 100%. As a teacher, you need to know what the standard is asking you to do. Not what you're supposing, not what you think, not what activity beautifully fits it, but what the standard specifically asks and how that can be correlated to real life. As a teacher, you need to know the standard and how the standard can be break down to little pieces.
Yeah, I agree. Now, another thing that I think as a teacher you really need to understand when you're going into your planning session and your actual lesson plan, whatever it is that you're going to write down, please remember that just because it's a cute activity or it's a pretty activity or it's something you think the kids are, oh, they're just going to love me for doing this. If it has nothing to do with your standard, please leave that activity for the end of the year when it's time for your curriculum to be over and you're just looking for some fillers for the end of this school year. Please leave those pretty activities for then, because we really need to use all the time that we have to give them as much as we possibly can. So if you know what your standards are and what it is that you're supposed to be imparting into these students, you're going to leave those fluffy activities alone.
They do not heed the rigor of what the standards are asking. Usually the very pretty activities, and they're cute, and I'm not going to deny the kids love them, teachers love them even more, but if that activity does not fit, like when I said, leave it. Just, you have time around Christmas and around the end of the year, you have time for the cute activities. But while you're teaching, find the things that heed the rigor of the standard.
So when you go into your pre-planning mode, you need to be thinking about what is it that I want these children to know in the end. When all these 22 pages are completed, what is it that they should know at the end of that? So if you go into the planning session with that in mind, it will help you formulate all the things that need to be in that plan to start with. And I have to say this because we say this a lot, and I don't think we as teachers take it to heart. You also have to know your plan is just like a recipe. It's just like a recipe. It's a guide. And it doesn't mean that you have to do verbatim everything that you put on this paper, because we know from day to day things are going to change. Things are going to change. You think you have this great activity that you're going to do today, and you walk in and you start this great lesson and all the kids' eyes glaze over.
It's Monday morning.
Exactly. So you don't just continue to do that lesson. You have to stop and change on a dime. You have to change up some stuff. So don't think just because I wrote it down, I absolutely have to do this. Because if midway through this great plan that you've made, you find that kids are getting nothing out of it, you've got to stop and change on the dime. So this is a guide. It is not the all end all. It is simply a guide for you to use, and it should be a working document. We talk about working documents all the time.
Yes.
So I don't know about you, I would have a written copy on my desk. I know the whole written copy thing or the hard copy is a thing of the past for paper reduction and all that, but I always had a paper copy so that when I had a minute, I could run over and jot some things down. This sucked. This was great. Keep this, throw this out. Don't ever do this again. Retool how you do that. So that I could write on there so I'll know as I'm doing my reflection, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't work, this is what I need to do next time. How about you?
It's the same with us. It has been always part of my planning, but officially it's introduced now in the district. We do the backwards planning. We start with the end. So the first thing that we find is the activity that you're assessing or the closing activity. And what we're looking at majority of the times, and finally I got my niche on that one, it has to be related to something that happens in their life. It's not just one problem that you get from somewhere or some activity, very nice. No, it has to be related to real life. And then from there, we start planning upwards. Okay, so what is the step before the final one? What's the objective? You go kind of jump at what exactly I have to tell them to do that. And then how do we work back and forwards together, individually, alone? And so that's how it, but I do agree full-heartedly with you. This is just a guide.
Yes.
This is not the law. You will never be 100% sure what the class will have this day. We have days where sometimes the door opens, we need to test this, we need to test this. So it's just a guide for you to go through it, and sometimes it look very nice, sometimes it's just but now you have to be prepared and make your peace with, well, there's going to be those days that it's not working. So just write down and make the note. This activity, I thought it's very good. The kid just did not went for it. Straightforward. It was very cute for me. The kids thought that it's very, very boring. Make notes down.
And even with that, it doesn't mean that you have to throw this activity out for a lifetime. It just means maybe they're not developmentally ready to do this activity at this time of the year. You might be able to come back to it later on in the year, and it could be a big hit. But you have to be aware of those things and know that this is a guide, and don't have a major, meltdown because you didn't do every single thing that you wrote on this plan. However, now I'm going to take a hard turn. Because we know that we're evaluated, and we know that at some point in time, some administrator is going to come into your room and they're going to say, hand me your plans, and they're going to sit down and they're going to evaluate you. We normally call it, and I'm just going to be real with you, we call it a dog and pony show. That's exactly what we call it. So we know on those days you feel like, okay, I have to do everything that I've written down here because that's what they're going to evaluate me on. And sometimes, in some cases, maybe more than just some, that's probably true. So on those days, we know, we understand, we've been there. We've had to do it, we still have to do it now. On those days, you may have to follow it by the letter or to the letter, but in most days, it's not going to happen. So don't have a major meltdown if it doesn't. So that's going to lead us right into our last little point, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit about why are we even doing these plans.
I will be straightforward with that. For me, doing a lesson plan, even though there are 22 pages in this one, it gives me confidence, because the moment I sat down to plan for the whole week, usually at home, usually Sundays, I'm looking for what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, what I'm going to use, and that pushes me to investigate a little bit more. Do I need another activity? Do I need another video? Is it possible to use some kind of other manipulatives? For me, it's the investigative part, and then the security. I can always go back to this plan and look at the day that I'm teaching if I'm missing something, if my guide step by step is going there. And I have this little thing with the lesson plan. I do introduce kind of the security activities, which is if the other ones that are not working, okay, can I put this one still hitting the standard, but they're kind of the backup activities. I like it, gives me security.
And I totally 100% agree with the security part of it. But not only that, I want to make sure that I'm putting forth my best effort to give these students what it is that they're supposed to be getting. And that's the whole point of a plan. You don't want to walk in every day and not have a clue until you crack open a book and decide, oh, well, this is what I have to do, so this is how I'm going to do it. We all know we have those days where things happen and we haven't had time to thoroughly, make a plan for something. This happens to us probably on a daily basis at home just because of life. However, it's a better thing to have a guide rather than to walk in cold turkey all of the time. To me, that's not putting forth your best effort. And if I am going to be a person that wants a child to look at me, I want them to get information from me, and I want to, and I know this, people don't like this, be some sort of a role model to them, then I want to have a plan so I can put forth my best effort for them, because that's in essence what I'm being paid to do. So a plan is a necessary evil. You need to have a plan. You can't just walk in there and just do whatever it is that you want to do.
And makes you investigate a little bit more of the time. And when I say a little bit more of the time, I'm conscious of how much time we put in planning. But just echoing back from Renee, it's if you think about the kids and what are you going to teach them and the different needs that they have. In my case, I'm a bilingual teacher. What kind of vocabulary I'm going to present? What kind of new words that they can easily accept that I'm going to have in the planning activity. It's very important because I'm giving them a part of everything else, the security and the access to a new language.
Right. And so since she's talking about the reality of it, so I'm going to step in and say, I always taught in Title I schools. I've always taught students who have not had the opportunity to have various experiences. So I feel like it is my duty to give them as many of those experiences that they may never have had a chance to get or may not get once they leave my room. So I have to have a plan for that. If I know I'm teaching a certain subject and I know the kid would understand this concept more if they had had the opportunity to have this experience, then I have to sit down and figure out, okay, so how can I give them this experience in real life so that when I give them this concept, then they'll understand and they'll be able to put it together. And we're trying to create thinkers.
Exactly.
Not regurgitators.
Exactly.
So if I can give you an experience, I have to sit down and plan for that experience. So that's a really big why factor for me too, why I'm going to do a plan, because the children that I work with have limited experiences, and so I have to plan this out to give them the experiences that they need, especially being a math and science teacher. You know, we have to really find some creative ways to give them some experiences that they may have not had.
Same as you, always being a Title I school teacher, so in the same position, plus I'm coming and working with the bilingual kids. Majority of them come from immigrant families. And it's the same with talking, the standards present different things that they don't even have idea what it is. They have not seen it, they have never experienced. So when I plan, I have to think, how do I present this that it actually correlates to their reality?
Right.
And then go back of how do I pull from their reality and show them that there is more of these around. So it gives me that pleasure to think that I can use the lesson plan as a guide to work and present something new to them, a new experience, a new knowledge, and then challenges me. I'm not going to, it's a challenge when you have to teach them about mortgage and you know that all of them are renters.
Yes.
So that concept, where do I start and where do I go to present that specific standard that we have in our curriculum?
And it also makes you think about the things that you take for granted. And I'll use this example. I'll never forget teaching a science lesson, and one of the vocabulary words was now I'm forgetting the word. Okay, sorry. One of the words was
That's okay.
Oh shoot. What do you call it? Oh, okay. One of the words was first aid kit. And it was on a test, and half the class didn't know what a first aid kit was. And I took it for granted that this is something that everybody knows about. But because of the kids that I serviced, they had never seen a first aid kit. So it made me conscious as I'm going through my curriculum, looking at certain things. Okay, I know what this is, but let me think about the kids that I have. Do they know what this is? Mm-hmm. So I have to make it a point to somehow weave this into a conversation and give it to them contextually so that when they see this again, because as much as we hate to say we teach to the test or we're teaching to make sure that they can pass a test, that's all a part of it. So if this shows up on another test, because we know tests are written for, certain demographics and that kind of thing, they'll know what this is, because that blew my mind. And I'm looking at the kid like, a first aid kit? What do you mean? You don't know what a first aid kit? But they didn't know what it was. So I couldn't take that for granted any longer. So in my planning, I'm going through the information I think she mentioned misconceptions before. I'm thinking about all those misconceptions and just stuff that they may just not know because they've not had that experience. And how can I get that in there so that they'll be aware? So do you think we've covered it enough?
Yes, I think what the lesson plan will be for me, just right there, the truth straight to you. You don't have control. It's going to be a lot of things that you really don't need in the lesson plan, but the parts that you need to work out on those with the conscious that this is for the kids, and whatever the kids need, you have to have them prepared. And it's a living document. It can change from minute to minute.
Yeah, so we're going to end it right there for lesson planning, or the lesson plan, I should say. So if you have any questions or you have comments, again, we say feel free to email us or put it in the comments, and we will certainly get back to you. We want to end on this last 5 minutes by talking about something that's happening right now.
Yes.
And so I had the opportunity, and let me just go ahead and put it out there now, and let me say it seriously. This is not an endorsement.
No.
This is not an endorsement. But anyway, so I had the opportunity to attend the Kamala, and I'm sure I'm saying her name wrong, Kamala Harris presidential rally here in Harris County. And she chose, and I'm going to read some of this, she chose to tell us her new proposal that she has as far as closing the pay gap for teachers. And I'm just going to read this verbatim. It says, based on where you get your information, studies have shown that teacher salaries are 15 to 19% lower than comparable professions in any state across the country. So of course, those of us in the crowd who would benefit from a pay gap decrease, we're happy to hear this. All right. So I'm going to give you some of the major the bullet points from this proposal. So one, she proposed a federal investment that would increase pay for nearly every teacher in America on average of $13,500. That's every teacher. So we would get basically $13,500. She also said part of this plan would be an incentive that would be given to every state to participate in this plan. So if the state took this plan and gave this raise to their teachers, then there would be an incentive to them, I'm sure, as far as federal money goes. The highest need public schools, which we're talking about Title I schools, would receive more federal money to increase the teacher pay even more. So if you worked in some of these really low socioeconomic schools, then you would be able to get a bigger raise. Teacher recruitment, training, and development, there would be more federal money put into recruiting, more higher caliber recruits to go into teaching. And one of the other points was this money could also be used to support teachers unions.
Oh, that's interesting.
So of course, we, the teachers that were in the crowd, it all sounded really good. It all sounded really good. And even me, I clapped for her at that point, because being a teacher, these are some things that are important to me. But this is a huge endeavor. It has been taunted as being one of the biggest federal kind of things to be done for a teacher ever. And so my question, like many others, was how are you going to pay for this? Now, I'm not going to go into all of the ways. She had like a half a dozen ways in how that they would pay for this without taxing the regular person. So can that be done? Who's to say? But I just thought it's something that we should at least be aware of that is being proposed, because even if whether she makes president or not, or becomes our president or not, we have a problem as far as teacher salary goes. We have a problem as far as funding schools that are in our lower social economics and those kind of things. We do have a problem with those. So to hear somebody actually come out and talk about something that's near and dear to our heart was refreshing, to say the least. Now, do I think it can happen? I don't know. I'm on the fence with that, whether or not I think it could actually happen. She was talking about making it happen within a year. I don't see that happening.
Don't believe that.
If she becomes president, I don't see that happening within a year. But that's my opinion. So if you want to know more about it, you can Google it, as the people say. Google it. She has a website. You can go on her website and look at it. But I just thought it was something interesting that we should, as teachers, since this is our field, we should know that these things are happening. Anything else?
I'll just jump with us right now. We talked a little bit the last time about it. There is a big proposal of $5,000 increase in teachers' pay. It's going through our House. The House already voted and passed it. So, my opinion, teachers need that. We really need that, and we need the respect to the teachers' profession back in place. I do have a problem with hearing that it's just for teachers. A school does not work just with teachers. It just does not happen that way. You need your professionals. You need your secretaries. So if the raise comes, it should be across for everybody. Strangely enough, and I'm just going to throw it right there, we're hearing more and more about that because elections are coming closer and closer. And it's a lot of teachers that are feeling the inequality right now. I really hope it's not just election campaign. Well, I really hope, because we really need that. We really, really, really need that.
Yeah. So these are some things that you can be making yourself aware of. If you've not looked into some of these issues, make sure that you're checking with your own local establishments, local governments, to see what's going on in your area. And with that, we are now going to sign off, and we ask that you make sure that you send your comments, make sure that you send questions, anything that you would like for us to talk about in the future. Go ahead and send that to us. Anything else?
No, we're done for today.
All right, so this is Vinay and Ruby, and we are Two Tired Teachers signing off.
Bye.